Hey there, sweet friends. Welcome back. I hope you are all well and happy halfway to Halloween. I know we're a couple of days late, but we didn't have a post scheduled for that day. So I think as long as we're still in the same week, it will be fine. This is such a fun way to jumpstart that inspiration for the upcoming holiday season. And so we're going to make these really sweet little pocket folios. And I'm going to have some Amazon envelopes along with some papers from my stash, and so that makes these really fast and easy and a great way to get through what you already have and make room for something new. Before we get started, I just wanted to take a quick second to thank the Tech Hubby for creating a whole nother fun intro for us for this special Halloween post. So make sure to let him know in the comments how much we love his very creative intros. So we're going to make this one during the tutorial portion, and then at the end I will flip through this one as well so you can see it is the same measurements and technique, but now I have two really sweet holiday folios. So if that sounds good to you, then stick around and we will make it together. So I pulled a couple of collections from my stash to work with today. I don't think these would be considered current, but they are still a lot of fun to create with. These are previously loved collections, and so my interest is to really kind of work through some of these pattern papers and cut aparts. And so I just pulled a couple, and I would say this is an opportunity to really mix and match because the pieces for the pages are not all that large, and so you could really work in a lot of different collections as long as they were similar and had a kind of a common color palette. I think that would work well. And so I've got this Creepin' It Real collection from Photo Play, and also this Simple Stories, Simple Vintage Scary Stories. And so I'm going to show you two of these folios today. We're going to create one, and then I did one off camera so we can show you that one at the end. And so I am going to be working with more of these envelopes that I picked up from Amazon, and this would be the A2 size. Now, the thing with the envelopes, you get them in a kind of large quantity, and so you have to be very intentional about using them. And so the challenge can become, how do you make it so that it's fun and interesting? You want to do something different with it. And so I think today we're going to get use out of this still to make a pocket, as we usually do, is to cut that in half or have a side load pocket. But today we're going to cut it from corner to corner. So now we're going to have a diagonal pocket, and then we can cover that and add it to a folio with a pretty sturdy base. And this makes these pockets super easy. So the first thing I want to do is remove this backing from the tape, and then just go ahead and seal that up. Now I want to bring this to my guillotine cutter so that these points here, these corners, fall directly right along where the blade is. You see now I have cut that in half. And for the purpose of our folio, I want our pockets to be facing inward so that when we close it up, all of those inserts that we add will stay inside. So for the left-hand pocket, this will work fine. For the right-hand pocket, though, you need to flip that around, and so you can see how those would come together and keep all your contents secure. I really don't have much interest in doing the math to triangulate the perfect size that would go on top of this pocket so that it would be a layering pattern. But what I can do is add some double-sided adhesive and stick it down and then cut it back out. And so now we have it perfectly cut and trimmed to match this corner pocket. So let's go ahead and do that for this one as well. And remember that they do need to orient in this position. So I want to adhere this side to my paper. I have specifically chosen this dot because it doesn't matter what direction it winds up falling in, it will not be upside down or sideways. So I am just going to take off the backing from this paper tape. And then find the piece of the paper that is wide enough so that I can get it right up along the edge. And then I would just clip this out by running my scissor right along the edge of that pocket. And now you can see when we flip it over that they will be going in the right direction and have a pattern that is not upside down or sideways. So the next step I want to do is bring in some cardstock to adhere these to. And because we're working with A2 size, that means that I want the paper to be just the same height as that envelope, but I do want to add a little bit of width so that when I adhere them down, there will be some space in the middle that will allow us to add some depth for the inserts that we want to add. So I want to use a sturdy cardstock for this, and it is going to be 5 3/4 by 9. I'm going to add one side and then the other, and then I'll bring this to my scoreboard and score those lines in. That way I know I've got it exactly right where I want it. And so for this section, I do want to have a 2 glue combo. So I like to have my double-sided adhesive along with my Tombow. Bring this right to that corner and keep it straight and even along the side and the bottom. So now I have both of my pockets in place, and as I mentioned, we need to add our score line in the middle. So I'm going to position this so that the point will fall directly on one of the grooves on the scoreboard, and then I'll just take a couple of quick passes here, not putting too much pressure so that I don't push through. And then for this side, I'll do the same thing. So I just need to adjust that a little bit and then put this side in as well. For this side, you will notice this is coming up a little bit, and that would be just where that flap was. So I'll just take a second to adhere that with my Tombow. I want that to be nice and flat. Not too much that it squeezes out, but you just want to make sure that is well secured. Might be tempting to fold this right away, but I do want to put some pattern paper in the background of these, and so let's just go ahead and do that so that we can see exactly where our score lines are going to fall. Now originally my plan was just to add some of my tape to the top and then slide it in, but I found that that was actually quite difficult to get that in that corner pocket. So my new plan is to adhere a little bit of my double-sided tape and then position this inside, you see, and then I can pull it up and pull the backing off the tape, and that made it much easier to get that into position. So let's just put a little bit of that double-sided tape here. Making sure not to have it all the way to the edge, because remember we're going to have our border. So let's do that for both sides. And then I want to position this down into the pocket so that whatever you want to put in and out will slide easily on this surface. And so I have this pattern cut to be 5 5/8 by 4 1/4, so that I have the border of that envelope. So let's put this down into the pocket, position it right where we want it to land. Remember, you need to be well on the other side of your score line so that it won't interfere with that folding. And then just pull up that corner and remove the backing from your double-sided tape. And then just fold it back over, and you see that it is positioned exactly where I want it. And we didn't have to struggle with that adhesive getting it into the pocket. So let's do the same thing for this side as well. Easier to turn this a little bit so I can see better. And then same thing for the side, just pull the backing off of your tape and press that back over into place. And now whatever you put into these pockets is going to slide in nice and smooth. So you can actually just go ahead and fold that on your two score lines now and see that we have built in some room here for the bulk of the papers that we want to add. Make sure to get a good crisp fold there on your score line. Now, for my project today, I do want to have 2 sets of pocket pages. So I have prepared one in advance, and so here that one is. You can see that I chose that polka dot paper for both, but I did switch out the background just so that it would be a little bit more interesting. And now I want to join these together. And so I have another piece of my cardstock. This time it's going to be a 5 3/4 high by 8 3/4 wide and scored at 4 3/8. So that's exactly in half. And then I am going to utilize some pieces that were not quite long enough, but I am going to join patterns together. So this would be the same measurement as what you put into those pockets. And I'm just going to choose patterns that have a very definitely different scale and color so that I can use these as a nice layering pattern. Gives it a little bit of extra detail. So let's just throw that onto the bottom. And that will make sure to be the right height to cover what we need. So I have already prepared this with a row of my double-sided tape. And this is another place for your 2 glue combo. I want to join our 2 pocket page sections together with this in the middle. So add this paper tape. Putting on my Tombow. And I'll bring these together so that the corners match, and then keeping it even from side to side. So that would be the middle, and this would be one side of those pockets. Let's do the same for this. Just keeping in mind the orientation of my pockets so I don't accidentally put anything in upside down. Corner to corner. Side and bottom. Press that into place. The double-sided tape will hold that while the glue sets up. So now what we have is 2 pocket pages, this connection in the middle, and then another set. So I do want to add some inserts for this because that is where we can add a little bit more extra detail. So I'm just going to pick the cutter parts from the collection, and these are the 3x4. So I'm just going to put one. You see how nicely that slid into there because we have the back covered with that single piece. There is some additional room in here for other keepsakes and mementos as long as they're flat. And you can even come back in and maybe utilize the sticker sheet to add a little bit of decoration to the front of the pocket, but you're still going to get 2 good size pages here if you want to add your bigger pictures. And let's put this set in the back. So now we have fun inserts for there. Let's cover the back with our collection paper. And once again, I am just going to combine patterns here. Maybe if I get this flat, it'll be easier to see. Darker colors don't always come across as well on camera, but I think I can get it centered pretty well so that you get a nice border of that cardstock. And if you had pages that were tall enough, you would not have to combine unless you just like the added extra detail, which I kind of do. So that one is going to be the back. I'm going to add just a little strip here of my tape so that I can adhere some ribbon. This will be our closure. Let's have this pretty houndstooth from Really Reasonable ribbon, and I think it matches really well. It ties a nice bow too, and so I think this is perfect for this. The same combination for my front cover, so let's just go ahead and add that in the same way we did the back. Actually, I do want to put a little bit of my Tombow here because we're going to sandwich that trim and keep it secure on the front. So a little bit of added extra will be nice. So just go ahead and plunk that right into place and finish it off with the other pattern. Just going to go ahead and leave that flat while we continue working along. Now, normally I would be putting in a white doily as a layering piece, but because the cutter part that I wanted to use has a lighter background, I am just going to choose to use that same black cardstock. And I do want to center this from right to left, but have it quite a bit higher than middle. Because I have a nice flower arrangement to add. And like I said, I did have that cut apart. I did use a nice die with a unique shape on there so that it would look a little bit more interesting, and also cut a little bit of that background off. That makes it a better scale for this smaller cover. I did cut an additional piece of heavy cardstock to add that too, pop that up on a spacer, and added an eyelet with some twine. And you can see how wonderfully now that is just popping right off of that background. And so I think that makes a beautiful focal image. Now, those flowers I mentioned here are just some made by me, and I did have the greenery that I would use switched out for more of that black cardstock, a little bit of this netting with a spider web detail on it, the same twine, and more of that black houndstooth. And you see I'm going to add this right to the bottom. This is going to fill in this area and really anchor that focal image. So I'll add that with hot glue. I have a couple of little jack-o'-lantern charms from my stash. I want to put this right here on the top. Just sticking that in place with some hot glue. And then let's just go ahead and tie this up now so that we can add our sequins. And this is just going to be a nice simple little bow. I can also trim it if I need to make sure that we have enough ribbon, and got those ends cut at an angle so they won't fray. Switching out my usual light colored sequin this time for something that will coordinate a little better. And so I'm picking these pretty orangey ones. I'll put 2 on my image and then 1 down on the base so that it will help to add some dimension. And of course we want to add that with our tombow. I really hope that this is going to inspire you to take a look at some of the supplies and see if there is a different way you can utilize them to make them fun and interesting. Like I said, if you have invested in them, you have to be quite intentional about actually using them, or they just sit in your stash and take up room. So this is our easy to create diagonal pocket folio. And then I did prepare one off camera, like I mentioned here. And so it has all of the same measurements and technique. I just kind of switched out a couple of the layers on top so that I could better feature that cute tag. I do have a charm here, the same sort of flower arrangement for this as well. And then for this one, I did use that Simple Stories collection. And so the dot in here is on a craft background. And because Simple Stories has really fun tags, I thought that would be a way to utilize those. These are actually quite nice because you can add journaling on the back. I'm going to get that same set of pages that are good for bigger pictures, and then another set of pockets. So that is going to be it for our project today. Now, as I mentioned, we will be doing our series that come up for Christmas and for Halloween. If you have any suggestions on what you would like to see, you can drop that in the comments below, along with a little note to Tech Hubby to thank him for creating another fun intro for us. And that is going to be it. I sure do hope that you enjoyed our halfway to Halloween project. If you did, don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe. And as always, I'm wishing you a happy and productive day. And thank you so much for watching. Bye.